Kris and Mads, sisters who love a good story.
The only thing better than experiencing a good story is talking about it.
We're here for the unfiltered, unhinged conversations with fellow story lovers and storytellers.
And the occasional rant or rave about the shit that rips our hearts out and puts us back together again.
The stuff that makes us laugh till we pee our pants.
And the ones that teach us what it is to be human. Welcome to the Sisterhood. Welcome to the show, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have author John Gwynn, the author of The Faithful and the Fallen, of Blood and Bone, and most recently the Bloodsworn Saga, which completes this month with the third installment, The Fury of the Gods, which we were so excited to receive an arc for. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the show. Thank you so much for talking to us today, John. We're so thrilled.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, well, I mean,
this is a dream come true for us. We absolutely loved interviewing your sons, Will and Ed. I do think that kids usually are a wink from their parents, right? So they're so cool. I bet you're like the coolest. And it meant a lot to us. It meant a lot to us that you said you'd do an interview and that we got an early book. It's like pinch me moments.
Yeah.
So I am embarrassed. I have not yet started your other series
The
because
Faithful and the Fallen.
The Faithful and the Fallen. She sold it really hard, but she said it's not easy. It's not easy. And I was like, I don't know if I'm here for it. But then Bloodsworn literally stole my life the last couple months. I'm having such a great time. You have incredible characters. The theming is just everything from our childhoods. We also read a lot with our dad, which we heard you read with your kids quite a lot.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we want to start your interview. Our dad's a big sci-fi fantasy guy, and so he started us off at 10 with The Lord of the Rings and was like, you have to start experiencing stories with this story. So with a little bit of sleuthing with Will and Ed, we heard some similar things happened in your household. So can you talk to us about how reading went down in your family?
Oh yeah, it was exactly like that. Really, bedtime stories was where it all started. So, reading to get the boys off to sleep, and I'm not sure if it might have started with C.S. Lewis and then Tolkien, something like that. But Tolkien was in there very early. Books that I loved reading when I was the very first fantasy book that I remember was the Book of Three by Lloyd Alexander.
Okay.
I remember my teacher sitting down and reading that to me when I was maybe 7 or 8, something like that. And that's what started me off on the fantasy road. So that was definitely in there, and they all love the Chronicles of Prydain and those characters in the Book of Three and the Black Cauldron.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's just always been books in our household, always books.
Yeah. And did you all I suppose you were probably handling the to be read list early on, but now do the boys recommend books to you?
Oh, all the time. They read a lot more than I do now, shamefully. But it's one of the sad things about being kind of writing professionally is you get less reading time for pleasure. Because a lot of my process is to do with research, so I spend a lot of time reading kind of more like academic texts or mythological texts, things like that. So it's just a matter of time.
Is that for both of your series, or is that more with Bloodsworn? Did you do a lot of research text reading for Faithful and the Fallen?
Yes, yeah, because that's the way I write. I don't. I didn't go to any creative writing courses or anything like that. I just started writing as a hobby when I was probably my mid-30s, something like that. I'll give you the full story. So I was teaching at university at the time, and my wife was at home with my daughter Harriet, who is disabled. So I took a bit of time off of work to help out at home, and 1 year kind of became 2 years, and then it became 3 years. So I realised I wasn't going to go back to teaching, and I thought I need to do a hobby at home that will keep my kind of my mind engaged, because I was working with my wife in her business, but it was like antiques and vintage furniture, and so I'm not very practical. So I thought I needed something to keep my brain engaged. So I was talking about it to my wife, and she said, "Why don't you try writing a book?" I said, "Don't be silly. I don't think I have the skill set for that. I have no idea how to go about writing a book." And then we just I remember it very clearly. We'd just come home from watching the Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, and we were all sitting around having dinner afterwards. And my wife mentioned it again, and then my three boys were all excited about it, and said, "Go on, Dad, please try and write a book." So I thought, okay, I'll have a go. It might be fun. And so that's where Malice started. But once I sat down to have a go, I thought, actually, I have no idea how to write a book. What do I do? So I thought the only way I know how to write is how I learned at university, which was, one of my lecturers, his mantra was, you read and then you read and then you read some more. So it's all about the research. So that's how I started. So yeah, I did a lot of research for The Faithful and the Fallen as well. Really, it's inspired by, and all my books are inspired by a mixture of history and mythology. So The Faithful and the Fallen is more kind of Celtic mythology based, and the history is probably, around based around the Boudicca's revolt and Caesar's Gallic War, the kind of Iron Age Europe.
Okay.
So I do a lot of research. I did a lot of research for The Faithful and the Fallen. A few years, really. I was at it before I started writing properly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, this makes so much sense. Let's just talk about The Faithful and the Fallen real quick.
But spoiler free for Kristen, always.
Yeah, we can't spoil Kristen, so I have to figure out how to do that. But I love your settings. As a fantasy reader, I think setting and world building and point of place is like very important to me. But, and it feels so real, but I think that my favorite stories are where it's so well done that I hardly notice it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like I'm so in the world that I can't really like pick up on like, oh, I wonder if that was true, or I wonder how he came up with that, or she came out with that. It's just like, oh no, this is just like a real place. I've just never been there. And this is a real history, and this is a real point in time. And so then it just feels so real to me, and it's so grounded that I can just focus on the characters and the plot. Because I'd say as much as setting is important to me, I read for characters. So sure. That's so interesting. Like, of course you researched it. Of course you did, because it does feel so real.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh.
That's kind of bizarre to me, because there's just this thing, I feel like, in the world where people are so impatient, right? Like they just want to do, produce, which I'm sure you probably feel like that sometimes when you have deadlines for your books. But I don't know. Like, I wonder, the greats, like the books that I think will last for centuries. I don't think they were very rushed. Mm-mm. I think people really like put their heart into it, and they like took the time. And that's why things last. So we appreciate your hard work and all the things you've done in the background to give us really great reading material.
Well, I mean, it doesn't really feel like hard work. It's fun. It's a hobby. So I enjoyed doing it. I still do.
Oh,
I pinch myself really. I just feel very lucky that I've managed to make a living out of doing something that I enjoy so much.
Yeah, that's incredible. What to you makes the perfect book? Like, what's the perfect recipe for a perfect book for you? It's going to be 5 stars.
Okay. I was talking to the boys about that the other day. Really, for me, it's when it makes me feel. When I'm reading a book and it makes me feel the emotions, then I'm in. And that's usually automatically 5 stars for me. So yeah, if I love the characters, also hate the ones that should be hated. If I get those feelings, then for me, it's a 5-star read.
I think you can tell that in what you write, because I sob in your books.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't smile at that, but that makes me happy.
Oh, me too. I feel like it's an automatic 5 stars for me if I'm just weeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to the end of Valor and my husband was like, "Are you okay?" Weeping. Just weeping at the end of Valor. And I was like, it can't get better than this. But my friend Margaret was like, just wait till you get to Ruin. And I was like, what am I in for? And you just mentioned the 2 towers. And Kristen and I went and saw that in theaters when we were teenagers with our dad. And then we went and saw Return of the King. And I can't remember which movie it is. I think it might be Return of the King, actually. But spoilers for Lord of the Rings, you guys. But when Éowyn cuts off the Nazgul's head, it was such an iconic moment that Kristen and I like stood up in the theater, unplanned, could not control our bodies. And we were like cheering for Éowyn. And so I get in Ruin, I will not spoil it, but there is an iconic dual moment in Ruin where I felt the same way. I'm like reading a book and I was so tense. My 2 favorite things, crying while I read and being so stressed while I read that I can't turn pages fast enough and I'm like sweating and hyperventilating. Stress reading is my favorite thing. So I was doing that in Ruin and I get to that scene and I was like, I had to stand up out of my chair. I was like, yes!
Well, I'm honored that something I've written has made you feel like that. That's great to hear.
Oh, thank you so much for writing it. It's like why I read. I'm just like, this is all I want.
I'm curious, what was the last 5-star book that you read personally?
The Daughter's War, Christopher Buehlman.
Okay, writing it down.
I was going to say, if it's a 5-star for you.
Yeah, I loved it. Really loved it.
Okay, I haven't even heard of it, so that's my favorite thing.
Okay, he wrote The Black Tongue Thief a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Which I've got, but I didn't get around to reading that. But I really wanted to have a go. I'd heard good things about it, and so I tried The Daughter's War because they're 2 standalones, and the Daughter's War is brilliant.
Ugh, brilliant.
It made me feel.
We're gonna have to get to it then. So let's talk about characters then, because it seems like if what you love to read and what you love to write are these emotional moments that make people feel. We talk about characters. I would love to talk about how you go about creating characters and how it feels to me like you set up plots to give your characters those pivotal moments. And as you said, characters you love to love, characters you love to hate. We love that your villains always think they're the good guys. They're always obsessed with their own agenda. And in some ways, as a reader, Kristen and I were talking about that in Hunger of the Gods, where we were like, oh my God, the villains kind of feel like maybe we would be on the side of their agenda, except that we're coming from the place of the characters in Shadow, where it's like, they stole this woman's freaking son. We'll just never be able to get behind that, no matter how good their agenda is. Yeah. So I'd love if you talk to us about your characters and how you set up plots for them to give them those really rich moments.
Yeah, I mean it's a hard subject for me to talk about because I don't really have a science behind it or a formula. It's more gut feelings with me, and I usually start off a new project with the story. I'll have an idea of the events in the story, and I'll work a little bit on that first. To get kind of a rough plot of the kind of the main story, and then I'll start working on the characters that I think would be interesting perspectives to see that story from. So that's really kind of the start for me, and then it's quite it's an organic thing from there. Very often I'm almost getting to know the characters as I'm writing the book. I know George R. R. Martin is famous for saying you're either a gardener or an architect when it comes to writing. So if you're an architect, then you plot it and plan it all out beforehand. If you're a gardener, then you just start writing and see how it grows. And I'm probably a bit of both. I do a bit of architectural work, and quite a lot of gardening as well. So yeah, my characters, sometimes I feel like I don't really have a proper grasp on them and their voice and until about halfway through the book. Yeah, so then I might go back and just rewrite earlier scenes, just as I feel like I get to know them clearer.
Do you ever feel like you've like sewed this beautiful tapestry and then you're just constantly going and ripping seams out? Like you already wrote that, but you have to go back and change it because you're like basically writing and creating as you go?
A little bit like that, yeah. I know with Orca from the Bloodsworn Saga, when I started writing her, I was writing too much dialogue for her, and I got a little, maybe a third into it, and I thought, no, she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't give long, lengthy answers. So it kind of grows, particularly with Orca, it grew as I was writing her.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. Because I can sit, like, if you were to have me describe Orca, I'd be like, she's the stoic silent type.
Yeah, exactly. But I just felt that she was giving, especially in the earlier scenes, she was giving too many explanations. It was just a bit too wordy for her character. So yeah, that's an example of how characters can kind of form as you're writing them.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me that I think that one of the biggest differences I feel between The Faithful and the Fallen and Bloodsworn is that we have Elvar and Orca's point of views, and I feel like you've shown such range in writing two very different, they feel very different as women. And we had female perspective in The Faithful and the Fallen, obviously, but it's like to get really in the head of two of them and feel how different they are. And then even having the Saterwitch sisters, even though we don't have their points of view, like they are very interesting. Like Bull is a very interesting character to me. So yeah, that feels like a big difference. Did that feel different for you writing it?
So I just think writing is a learning curve, and you're always trying to hone your craft and do it better. So it felt very different from when I wrote The Faithful and the Fallen, because I think, I just jumped in at the deep end, and I was learning my craft as I went. It helped out a lot by my editor. So yeah, I think I probably have more of a clearer grasp of what I want to do with characters now. Maybe write them a little bit tighter. It's a tough one, really.
It's interesting that I'm sure you feel as a critic for yourself that you've grown, but as a reader, I feel like you're very much in both of them. Like I feel like there's like a John Gwynn style tone, very present in both. So, and of course I haven't read the prequel series yet, but yeah, it's not as obvious to me as a reader that there's like a drastic change, other than that the main difference being like we get a lot of female perspective in Bloodsworn.
Great. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
No, I was shocked. I think I was heading to, our family has a lake house, and we all go up, and there's 6 siblings, and mom and dad are there, and there's grandbabies everywhere, and it's just,
that's lovely.
We all bring books, right? We listen to audiobooks on the drive, and I always want to pick up my book, but we're all just talking about our books. It's just like this fun thing that we do. Well, I had just started Shadow of the Gods, and I told Maddie, I said, what is going on? It's just a lot. I don't know what the plot is. Like, I'm waiting for we're going to destroy the ring in Mordor. Like, I'm waiting to be like, this is what the path is. And I was like,
I explained it to you.
Yeah, and Maddie said, John Gwynn, he doesn't really tell you out the gate.
No, I said
what we're doing here.
He has a signature. I said he was like this in Malice. It's like, here's our world, here's our characters, and then he ramps it up to 60 miles per hour right at the end of book 1, where he's like, and this is our quest. Or not our quest, but here's where we're going. This is what this series is about. And he gives it to you at the end. And I was like, he did the same thing in Malice. And I love it because as a character-driven reader, it's like, why do I care what we're doing unless I care about who these people are? But I do think it is kind of an inversion of what we're used to in classic fantasy, which is here's your quest and here's the people who are going to do it.
Sure, yeah.
And so Kristen
was thrown off.
She was just where? Why do we care about how are Orca and Varg and Elvar even related? I'm like, that's the fun part. You don't know yet.
Well, and in the audiobook too, all of the names, like I feel like obsessed with it. There's a little bit of like me reading Shauna Lawless at the same time that has just made me really kind of become obsessed with like some of these lores and how they feel like real history because pieces are taken from real history. That I'm getting my groove now. I'm hitting my stride. But at first, it felt like nothing I'd ever read.
It felt like Old English.
I was like, this is bizarre. This is bizarre. And now I'm so invested in all of these different gods. I'm like, I need more books. I'm going to need prequels, novellas. Like, I'm going to want all of it. It's just so fun. But yeah, I wasn't smart enough at first. I needed Maddie to give me a helpful lesson. And then on the drive back, I said, oh, okay. Everything's clearing up for me.
Yeah, I don't. Would you consider your stuff to be like entry level beginner fantasy? Are we complicating it?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really think of it like that. I mean, I don't know. I probably hope so. I hope that people could, think I'd like to give fantasy a go and pick one of my books up. But I don't know how easily they'd get on with that. I don't know.
Oh, I think so. I do think it's a pretty big departure from like romantasy, but I think like if you're a fantasy reader, I think, especially if you love characters, I think so. I do want to talk just briefly about your characters some more, about maybe, I know you say you kind of find their voice, but do you have character or people who inspire your characters, or like concepts or ideas or people from history who inspire your characters? And especially their dynamics. Like, I just want you to know the way you write sibling relationships has like healed something in me. I love my siblings so much. And I just think so often to create drama in stories, there's a lot of antagonistic familial relationships. Yeah. And I just love that. Like, I love Corbin and Cohen, and I love Lif and Mord, and I love like the Satyr Witch sisters. And I just feel like you write siblings so beautifully. And so I don't know. Are they inspired by your kids? Are they inspired by historic figures or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my writing is always, I think one of the main theme in all my writing is family and friendship, love, and those are even though there's talking crows and giant wolves and shield wolves, really that's what it comes down to for me. Yeah. And lots of my characters have been inspired by my family. So one of the main characters in the Of Blood and Bone series is inspired by Will.
Oh, I have to read it now. I have to read it immediately.
Yeah, he's very much inspired by Will, and in the Bloodsworn Civic, he's inspired by Ed, because he's the funny one in our family, really, and he also likes cheese.
He also likes cheese.
Yeah, and then Coraline was a little bit inspired by my wife Caroline, from The Faithful and the Fallen. And of course, my daughter Harriet she's always been an inspiration to me. So she's kind of just scattered through the books.
Aww.
Yeah.
That is so sweet. Why hasn't Dad written a book for us, man?
Listen, our dad is a programmer. I don't know if he's going to write books. It's okay. He loves us in other ways.
What are like some of your favorite characters that you've ever written that you really just feel like I nailed that one? That's a well-rounded, I love their arc. Who would that be?
Oh, I don't know. Definitely Kraft, the talking crow from The Faithful and the Fallen, I think. Okay. But I don't know. It's towards the other characters. I mean, I really enjoyed writing Brynna in The Faithful and the Fallen.
Yeah.
And Orca in the Bloodsworn Saga. I loved writing her.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of my wife in her as well, I think.
Oh, that I would assume. I would assume if you're writing a female character, you'd have to be inspired by the women in your life. I would.
Yeah.
Think. That's so interesting. That's not who I thought you would say, but that's so interesting. Yeah. I feel like some of the standout characters for me in Faithful and the Fallen are like Makeen and Veritas, just because I loved both of their arcs so much. They were so unexpected. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even really paying attention to them in book one, and so. I love, I'm obsessed with both of their arcs. But yeah, that's so interesting. And I do love, it's kind of more intimate in Bloodsworn. like it is still a big cast of characters, but because we have the 3 points of view from book 1, it's like kind of a little bit more intimate cast. So yeah, that's really interesting. Who's your favorite in Bloodsworn?
Well, I love Orca, and I came off of reading, I don't know if you've read or heard, The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Long.
Yeah. So that's a book that Ed and Will are constantly telling me I need to read. I've got it, but I just haven't started reading it yet.
Uncontrollable sobbing. So there's a main female character in this book who is also a mother. So these are older women, which I have just not read a lot of. And I thought that no woman would ever top Misaki for me. And then I immediately meet Orca, and I'm like, whoa, maybe this is what it is for me to be in my 30s. And I'm just so incredibly turned on by these powerful women who are fiercely in love with their families, but also have such a deep strength. It's not a cocky strength. It's not a showy, flashy. It's like Orca, stepped away from her.
Well, so did Misaki.
Yes, like both of these women, and I'm reading them back to back. Maybe the universe or God is trying to teach me something in this season about humbleness and just having your own inner strength. But it's a beautiful story that needs to be told. These are very unique characters, and I would say Orca is right there with Misaki for me, but you do need to read that book, John.
I will. I promise I will. I will.
You have already told us a little bit about your writing process, but has your writing process evolved, and do you have like future projects planned now that Bloodsworn is closed?
I do. Yes. It's I can't really talk about it in too much detail at the moment because talking to my publishers about it and so on. But I definitely have something planned. And actually, it's it's inspired by my daughter Harriet. I don't know if you're aware, but Harriet died 3 years ago now.
Which was right in the middle of you writing this series, right? And you took a break with Bloodsworn.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, it's unimaginable, really. It's but so yeah, I finished writing Hunger of the Gods, and had handed that in, and all the edits were done. And then Harriet died a few months later, and it's just like your world exploding, really. It's just, there's no words, I just fell off the face of the earth, really, for a while. And just, my wife and my sons, we just held each other up, I suppose. And yeah, my publishers were amazing. My agent, they never put any pressure on me for book 3, for Fury. And it got to the end of last year, and I was starting to think, maybe I could try writing again, because it's a funny thing. Grief. It just hits you in so many strange ways that you just don't Before Harriet died, grief you always think of as a linear thing, and you hear about the stages of grief, and it's almost like, you go through stages A, B, C, and D, and then you'll come out the other end of it. But it's not really like that at all. It's just always there, and I think you learn to live with it. I think, we've all learned to live with that pain and that loss. Life never feels the same again, but somehow you just managed to start functioning again, because for a long time, we couldn't. Sorry.
We're both mothers with children, so we just, you can say what you want to say, but you don't have to. I think that if you had never written again, we would all understand why, and your fans would still be your fans, and we would, love you and your work through it. We're grateful for the stuff that you're still writing, but it'd be kind of cool. I think you were saying you were going to make a book for her.
Yeah. That's the plan. It would be fantasy and historically and mythologically inspired, but Harriet will be at the heart of it. That's yeah.
I hope that'll be really just a beautiful, what am I trying to say? Like a gift to her soul and a gift for your soul to be able to put that on page. This is your art, and this is, how you flow energy into the world. And for you to do that in love for her, I mean, I'll read it. I'm sure it'll put me in my feels, and it'll be beautiful however you do it, and probably gruesome because you can't help yourself.
No, true. Yeah.
But, I mean, Harriet's immortalized for you guys, but it would be really, really, that will be really special if you immortalize her in that way for all of us too. That would be really amazing.
Oh yeah, I'll try and do her justice.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. I can't wait. I know you can't say anything about it, but I'm full of questions now.
I know.
Actually, sorry, I should say this is the first interview I've done since Harriet died. So I was a bit nervous about it, really, because I haven't done any. I stopped doing everything book related for over 2 years, and then I got invited by my French publishers to France earlier this year in May, which was a really lovely experience. But that was quite nerve-wracking as well. It's the first thing I've done back in kind of the book world since Harriet died.
Yeah.
But so I did a little chat with Ed and Will the other day, which they recorded. But this is the first kind of first interview I've done with any book people really since Harriet died.
Oh, well,
I can imagine that. I can just imagine you're so changed.
Yeah.
So it's like to try to go back and do something how you did it or the way you did it or as the person you were. Just there is really no going back. So you just kind of have to either find a new way that you're doing it or not do it in some ways.
Yeah. I was worried about sitting down to write Fury because of feeling like I don't feel like the same person anymore. Once I sat down and started, it just kind of poured out of me. I wrote the fastest book I've written, I think.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
How long is that of fast writing for you?
That was probably 4 months.
Oh, wow.
That's really fast.
Yeah, that's really fast.
Sheesh.
Do you want to say more about that? How it kind of poured out of you? Do you think just because you knew where the story was going, or do you think it was kind of cathartic for you?
I think it probably was. Yeah. So and it was easier that it was book 3. I think so. The characters and the arc were all there. But it felt very cathartic. I think. And obviously, there's a lot of it touches on grief. People lose people, so hopefully I've got a deeper understanding of that now, and so hopefully that comes across in the page as well. But it was cathartic. It was intense as well. I was writing from when it was dark in the morning to when it was dark at night, which I don't usually do, quite as intense or as extreme as that. But so yeah, it's a different process to all my other books.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if that will carry through in your new work as well. If it's almost just kind of permanently altered your process in some ways.
I think that's probably the case, because you can't help but put a bit of yourself in your writing,
Yeah.
Oh, it's so intimate. I don't know how you authors do it. Yeah. How you can literally put your heart and soul into something, and then you just send it out to the masses. And I know when I'm reading an author that there is truth to every story. There's experiences, there's relationships, there's history. And I feel like it's very vulnerable. So for you to pick up the pen or type on the computer and just kind of let this flow, it's just so generous of you.
Yeah,
to do that
and very vulnerable. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's not like a 9-to-5 job, I suppose. No, you do put your heart on the page.
Yeah.
Do you feel like being a writer was always what you were meant to do, and you kind of knew that, or do you think it found you? And you said in your early 30s you started writing Malice. Did something just click and you were like, I actually always knew I wanted to do this, or did it find you?
I think it found me, actually. I mean, it's strange because when you growing up, people when people would say, what would be your dream job? And all children would say, oh, I want to be a rock star or a movie star or a train driver. One of my dream job would always be a writer when I was younger, but I never really just had that self-belief to have a go. So I just shelved it. You grow up and become an adult, and never thought any more of it. And as I said, it wasn't until I was in my mid-30s when my wife said, you should try writing a book. Yeah. So yeah, I think maybe it was kind of buried. It was there, but buried deep. Yeah.
And then it came forth. This is totally a tangent, but it's so interesting that your wife does antiquing and furniture, because that's what our mom does.
That's what our mother does.
Really?
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I remember when the boys were telling us that when we interviewed them, we were like, what? And then Ed was saying that that's how he met Mercedes. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is feeling very eerily familiar. There were some things that weren't so familiar, like something about a pet sheep or a pet lamb that wore a diaper, and we were like, cannot relate, but that's amazing.
Yeah. My wife is just crazy. We've got a goat living in the kitchen at the moment.
Stop. Really?
Yeah.
It makes me so happy.
She is living the dream.
But I can see inspiration for you have all of these animal companions and creature companions in your books, and it makes so much sense
exactly.
now.
She has to be so cool. She has to be so cool to let her children bring my kids. We have a cat living on our front porch right now, and we don't know where it came from. My kids are like, come on, let's just let it in the house. I'm like, no, we don't just let random animals live in our home. Like, that's not what we do. But maybe it's because we don't do it here, but you guys do it there.
Yeah, I'm afraid we do. Yeah. Caroline's the best though. She's just brilliant. She's got such a big heart.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I bet she finds you all the cool antique stuff to make your house feel like your books.
Yeah.
Curate it for you.
Yeah. Okay, this is a little bit of a departure from that, but I've had a conversation with some fellow book nerds about your work, and a lot of us also read Joe Abercrombie. So we were doing a little comparison, and I'd love you to weigh in. They were saying that, Joe kind of coins himself as like the father of Grimdark. And people were asking me if I thought your work was Grimdark. And to be honest, I don't really know what Grimdark means, but I know what I think it means.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think he is, is there going to be people evacuating their bowels before battles? Yes. Are you going to hear about intestines being flown around? Yes. Are people going to get nailed to walls? Yes. Lots of things are going to happen that are pretty gruesome. But I think that the main difference, and I love you both, but I think that one of the main differences in your work is that you are operating on themes of hope and courage and family, and that there's definitely a message about it's not really about who you're fighting, it's about who you're fighting next to. And I don't think that is in Joe's work. So I would say I think that Joe is Grimdark, but I don't think you are. But I want you to weigh in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely.
Yeah.
Completely. I love Joe. I think he's one of my favorite contemporary writers. Don't tell him I said that, because his head's far too big as it is.
Okay.
But I think he's an amazing writer, so talented, and his characters are just phenomenal.
So good.
Yeah, but I think there's probably more nihilism in Joe's work than mine.
100% agree. And I would say that nihilism is, I think, what would constitute Grimdark for me. It needs to have pretty, I don't think the word I'm looking for is existential, but it's just kind of like, it is what it is, we'll see how it goes kind of attitude. Whereas you're like, no, it's not, it is how it is, we'll see how it goes. It's like, you can make a difference, we have agency, and at the end of the day, like, whoever wins and whatever happens to me, like, my honor remains.
Yeah, that I think you summed it up really well. That's what I try to do. Yeah,
that's how your work lands with me. I think it may, like, I don't cry in Joe's work, but I do. I love his characters. Actually, weird crossover. I felt like some of the inner monologue we got from Guthvar in Fury specifically, I was like, oh, I am having serious Glocta flashbacks right now, in the best way.
Do you know what? I think that's a fair comment. I was reading Joe's first series just before I started writing the Bloodsworn, so I may have been inspired by maybe a bit of Glocta and Jezzel combined.
Yeah, you're right. He is like just a little combo.
Yeah.
But Glocta's inner monologue in the First Law trilogy is just like peak humor, and I felt like it really helps lend humanity to characters, and I didn't feel attached to or Guthvar in the first two books. I hate him on Lif and Mord's behalf, but in Fury, he really became like very human to me in that in the kind of despicable way that just Jezzel is human to you, and in the First Law trilogy, where it's just like, well, he's just kind of pathetic, isn't he? But he tries.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't often cry in Joe's books, but I do laugh a lot.
I'm curious about what you want your readers to feel and take from your work. I'm guessing you're a man of intention. You come off as someone who doesn't just accidentally do very much with your life, especially your writing. So what do you want readers to feel and gather from your work? Oh, crikey. I mean, I write to entertain. That's why I write. It's no kind of standing on a soapbox preaching or deep philosophy. I want people to just be entertained, because that's the feeling I had as a child. I think that when I think about writing, books used to carry me off into a different world, and they were my friends. I loved reading, and I loved books, and I was deeply passionate, and they would take me to just a different place for a while. And I think that's the heart of what I wanted to achieve with writing, is to do the same, to try and do the same for people, just to give them some time out from the stress and strain of real life, and just a bit of escapism, really. But hopefully you write something that has a bit of depth to it as well, that doesn't just feel like popcorn, I suppose, but something that may resonate with people and stay with people. That's why I took a long time thinking up kind of the phrase in The Faithful and the Fallen of truth and courage. So I thought I wanted to come up with a phrase which really just means something, and I think that those two values, if you can take those into life with you, to be honest in your relationships, and to be, and by courage I don't mean being a warrior, and standing in a shield wall. I mean facing the things that life throws at you, and facing them, dealing with them. That's real courage. So I hope there's some depth in my writing as well that will touch people's hearts and resonate a little. But the first goal was just to entertain people, really, and give people, like I said, what do I want in a book? For me it's a 5-star book if I feel, and so that's what I hope to write. I try to write something that will make people feel. Oh, you're doing such a great job. We are entertained and we are feeling all the things.
It's a great combo of both, because like I said, I do cry in your books, and I do feel seen. I think when you write love, and you write humor, and you write grief, and you write all, I'm just thinking about like Orca and Spurt, I guess. Is that who I'm thinking of? I think so. Oh, and I can't do spoilers. But the point is, like, you'll have a dynamic that will give you humor and irritation and grief and all of it, and so I feel very seen in my human experience, and that I experience all of those things, I experience all of that. So then I do feel a lot. But also, I mean, nobody that I know in fantasy writes tension and plot stress like you do. Like it, just when you're getting to the heat of a moment, switch POV. You're not going to find out what happens for 4 chapters, and it's like, oh shit! And then you're back in it, and you're like sweating, and it's great, and it just keeps you turning pages. So I mean, that kind of entertainment is just unparalleled. Like where you feel like you're in an action movie.
Oh, we need,
but it's a 600-page book. Oh, we need a show adaptation.
We need a show adaptation. I don't know who your people need to call, but I'm going to need you to do this for us, okay?
Would you love to see your stories on the screen?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think it's most writers' dream to see it. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing just seeing people doing artwork of it. I love that.
Is it the Broken Binding that are doing your illustrated Malice?
So the Faith and the Fallen, that's Grimdark Press. Yeah, and the Broken Binding they've just done the Of Blood and Bone series.
Okay.
Yeah.
We watched all of a Game of Thrones show, in the past, and I just keep thinking like there is such a market for this kind of high production level fantasy. Yeah. And I would love to see your stuff adapted just because I do think Game of Thrones does lean grimdark, nihilistic, and I would love to see not even like a traditional hero's journey, because I don't think you've really done that in either of your books, or either of your series, but to see that kind of hopeful, aspirational fantasy story done to the production level that Game of Thrones was done.
Is Peter Jackson busy? Can he give you the next decade of his life, please?
He would love it.
I'm sure he would love it. We just need to find his contact, I guess.
At the convergence point, wouldn't it be epic if someone bought the rights, you got the perfect director, and Will was at a point in his acting career where he could be in it?
He's always saying that. Yeah.
Okay. This is not an original
Put
idea.
Put it in the contract. Yeah. My son must be this character.
He's too old to play Corbin. Isn't he?
I think he'd quite happily play anyone.
He'll be Orca. He doesn't.
He was in it.
Put him in a wig. He can play Orca.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
Well, that would be amazing.
This is so much fun getting to speak to an author that we enjoy your work, but also your family. It just feels like we were meant to meet you. And we won't call you Papa Gwen, but we think that is the most endearing, amazing thing. Your boys just like light up when they talk about you. I know they're so proud of you. And we're all so proud of you for just what you've done. It's a very inspirational to start something so huge in your 30s that you didn't know was going to be huge. It makes me feel like I could do anything if he can just start writing as of just being a heavy reader and make such incredible work. What untapped potential do we all have within us? It's just a very inspiring story.
It's also very inspirational and hopeful for you to write again after losing Harriet. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. It makes us really appreciate Fury because you did not have to do it.
Yeah, it was a gift.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really special.
And everybody listening to this podcast needs to pick up the Bloodsworn Saga because this is an incredible tale. And even little old me, Kristen, who has a harder time with high fantasy, is having an absolute ball. So you have Fury of the Gods coming out. What is the date?
October 22nd here in the U.S., right? And 24th
That's right, yeah.
in the U.K.?
24th in the U.K.
Okay. Could you tell us really quick, John, just where people can find updates for you and your stories online? And also, I think you have a tour coming up. Do you have those dates handy that you could share in case any of our listeners are in the UK and able to find you on tour?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, I'm online on Instagram, X, and Facebook. So I'm always, if I have an update, I'll always post on there. And yes, so the book tour, it's so Wednesday, the 23rd of October, I'll be in Waterstones in Bath. Then on Thursday, the 24th, I'll be in Waterstones in Leeds. Then the next day, I'll be at MCM Comic Con in London in the afternoon. And then Waterstones Piccadilly in the evening of the 25th. And then there's a little break. And then I'm at Brighton Waterstones on the 7th of November.
Perfect. We're very envious that we're not still over there. We were just in Ireland for 3 weeks, but
Fabulous.
Back in the US.
I bet you that was a wonderful time.
It was really lovely.
Beautiful country.
No, we were in Connemara National Park, and it felt like we were on the set of Lord of the Rings. It was incredible.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Yes.
Stunning.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, how are you feeling about tour? Are you excited? Are you still feeling a little nervous and apprehensive about it?
Both. Yeah. I think you have. I do feel nervous about it. I am very excited as well, and I feel honoured that my publishers would put that faith in me to organise it. So it's fabulous. I have two fears really. One fear is that nobody turns up, and then if people do turn up, then my second fear is that I have to entertain them for an hour. So there is writers, I think, are we're not the most outgoing people by nature usually because it's such an isolated job. So going out in public often feels it's not my natural habitat, let's put it that way. But I'm really looking forward to meeting people who have read the books and enjoyed the stories. So it would be great fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can imagine it would be nerve-wracking, but everyone, first of all, people would do anything to get there. So I don't think you have to worry that it's not going to have a turnout.
Yeah, that's so funny that you feel that way.
As far as your other fear that you have to entertain them, I mean, I think you've already done more than enough in writing your books.
Yes.
They just want to tell you thank you, I think. That's all fellow readers that we talk to when we text people and be like, oh my gosh, we're going to get to chat with John Gwynn. It's like nothing but congratulations and envy, and people just be like, say hi for me and tell him thank you. Our friend Kelvin specifically told us to tell you thank you because he loves the Bloodsworn so much. So I think people just want to say thank you. I think we just really appreciate that you can do this thing that we love so much, but we couldn't do ourselves.
Yeah.
Like I'm an avid reader, but I don't feel anywhere near capable of writing a story. And so it's like,
I didn't either.
What?
I didn't either, so you could give it a go.
But I just always feel so grateful for I'm so glad these stories exist, and they just wouldn't if you didn't take the time or work through hard times or make sacrifices that you did or, experience the things that you did that make your work that much more transcendent and powerful. And so it's just, I think people just want to say thank you is my point.
Yeah, I know. When we went to, because I took my wife came with me when we went to France, and we were just overwhelmed by how kind people were. Meeting readers is a lovely experience. I'm sure it'll be good.
I'm so glad she could come with you. And is she coming with you to these? I know the boys are coming to a couple with you, but is she able to come with you?
Yes, she is. Yeah.
Great.
Oh, I feel like we need to send her a bouquet of flowers. Thank you for telling him to write.
Yes, it's all thanks to her.
It is. It is really. It is. Yeah.
She should be signing your books. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks you to everyone who listened and joined us for this conversation with John. We hope that you guys will pick up one of his series. I think you can't go wrong. Kristen picked up Bloodsworn first. I picked up The Faithful and the Fallen first. Really, you can't go wrong. They're both brilliant, transcendent, so much fun. You will definitely feel things, definitely bring tissues. But yeah, we hope everyone checks out the series, and we just thank you so much, John, for doing this interview, for it being your first one after a long hiatus. And we're glad that you took the time you needed, and we're also very glad that you were willing to come back. And we know grief isn't linear, so if you also need more breaks, that is also fine.
Thank you. Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for the invite. It's been lovely, really.
Oh,
really.
Good. Good. Well, best of luck with Fury. We know it's going to be massively successful, and I know everyone's just so thrilled.
Yeah.
So you will be hearing from us when Kristen and I both finish it. We'll be like, it's amazing.
Or we'll say, it's horrible.
We will not.
We'll keep you waiting. All right, John, we'll have an amazing rest of your day. Happy touring, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. Take care.